Alicia, this is so fun. So
I'm
great.
so
You're from Rainbow Sky Creations. And the thing about your work, it's the first time we've met. As soon as I looked at your website, and it was all about information for new teachers. And my goodness gracious, can you even imagine starting as a new teacher right now? I mean, it's tough, right? It's really tough out there. We all, not only in our community do we have new teachers, but we also work with a lot of people who coming into kids yoga teacher training for the first time. So the principles are the same. So I had you come and chat with our community today to talk more about what are your tips, because this is your expert background. This is how you serve your community around tips for new teachers. And of course, even if you've been teaching for a long time, there's always new things that you can go back to the beginning to remind yourself. So to get started, thanks for being here. And I'd love to hear, your background, your passion, and kind of how did you get to create this rainbow sky creation?
Thanks so much for having me here, Giselle. I really appreciate being on the podcast today. Now, I'm actually only one half of Rainbow Sky Creations. I have an amazing friend. I have an amazing friend and business partner, Ashley, and we've created Rainbow Sky Creations. And this beautiful community that we've created all stemmed from us wanting to give back to the teacher community. Both of
Mm,
us are passionate educators. We also really love creating. My actual first degree was in multimedia and photography. So the creator in me is quite high, I guess you'd say. So
yeah.
oh gosh, it's nearly now 9 years ago. I said to Ash, I've got an idea. We'd met in Dubai. I'd moved back to Australia, but I was living on the East Coast where she's from because my partner, now husband's there. And we said, look, let's start this adventure. And we began creating resources. We love hands-on, a love of learning. We really want to bring the kind of the real life into the classroom, but also just make it hands-on, not bums on seats, I guess like we had when we were younger. So kind of creating a new evolution of learning. And I feel like with yoga teaching, it's so necessary in today's classrooms.
Mm,
And there's elements that in Rainbow Sky we love about what yoga teacher does with regulating and breathing and all that jazz. So we then realized that when we shared our stories of being teachers and our
mm.
first years as teachers, it was pretty tough. I did a, in Australia, I did a diploma of education. So that meant I just had my first degree and I went and studied for a year and then they threw me into a classroom. I can't believe that.
That's mad. That's complete mad.
And they look, they still do that to today. Like you know, they get you in the classroom within 3 weeks. So you're learning as you go, which I believe is an excellent way to learn. And from there, we just realized that we had so many things that we had tried and tested in the classroom. And we thought, let's give this back to the community. Like,
Mm,
oh my gosh, I needed this when I started. I needed to know I wasn't alone, that what I was doing and what I was doing in the classroom and how I was feeling was actually really normal. So we just kind of wanted to normalize it, but also give you some tips and strategies. And we're all about, look, this is what worked for us. Give it a try and see how it goes.
right.
And like anything, you're going to adapt it to how it best suits you and how it's going to work with your cohort of students. Because I'm guessing in the yoga teaching world, you've got it one class after another class. And how it is with one group of students is going to be quite different with another group of students. But
Right.
you can learn the foundations that will
Yeah.
help you to be able to work with any group of students.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like what you're talking about. The resources are there, the principles are there, right? But also you've got this strong community that you've built, right? Because you've got that support system. It's just knowing that you're not alone as a new teacher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the last thing you want to do is feel like that you're alone in this teacher journey.
Yeah.
And I think the amazing thing of technology has allowed us to be able to connect with people all over the world. It
Yeah.
comes with its pros and cons, but the benefit is of that being able to know that you've got this support network if you don't have an amazing one in your little sphere
Yes.
in the real life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what in that community, what are you sort of hearing? I know here over in the United States and we run a school yoga program from people all over the world. We have some participants from Australia, but I'd love to hear from your community as well. What are some of those challenges, those biggest challenges that like what are you hearing are people
Yeah. Look,
saying?
I feel like there's a really common message that comes through with new teachers. There's kind of two big ones that are mentioned, and it's always comes down to classroom management. Like, how am I going to manage these kids?
Mm,
And the other thing is really work-life balance. I think we're reaching an age where we've experienced a really world event called the pandemic, and it kind of brought to the forefront, what am I doing with my life? Is this the best I can be? Like, am I
mm,
working so much but forgetting about the importance of life? And I think it really brought those two parallels into perspective during that time. And now that we're at the
right.
back end of it, I think people have kind of gone, do you know what? I think I need to set some boundaries and have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
better look at how much am I giving into my work, but also how much am I giving into my life. So they're the two big ones that we hear a lot about is the worrying of how am I going to manage these little and big humans and
Yeah.
how do I keep myself well enough to be able to love what I'm doing in the classroom?
And I think about, 20 years ago, or whatever it was, 30 years ago, when I first became a new teacher, those are the same issues that we had, but now I'm going back in the classroom as a teacher substitute, and it's just like 1,000 times more intense, right? And so you say classroom management, and back in the day was always something. As a teacher, that's always been a big thing is learning to guide the children along their school careers, right? So that isn't unusual. However, now, as you say, it is astronomical. And the work-life balance is even more so because we have so many more demands, don't we? And so many more pressures. So how are you approaching this with your community? I'm so curious to hear sort of, what are your sort of top tips if you were to say, if the new teacher is saying, okay, as a kids yoga teacher or as a classroom teacher, how do you help them to set up for success, but really to how do you calm your nerves? How do you build these boundaries? How do you not get
Yeah.
too far outside your comfort zone? You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't take lots of time. No one wants to add more things to their plate.
No, absolutely. I'm going to break it down to three things. Let's call it connection, consistency, and expectations.
Oh, I love
So
it.
yeah. So your first main protocol with anything with classroom management, you're not there to control the people in your classroom. Even as I'm a parent of young children and I have to check myself sometimes and go, I'm not here to control you. I'm here to guide and to model with you. But the main thing is if I do not have connection with the people in that room, it's
Mm,
going nowhere.
yeah,
Nothing's going in. So your first protocol is connection. And you might be wondering, well, how do I actually do that?
right.
Just think, how do you feel when someone uses your name? When they
Mm,
go, hey, Giselle, how are you today? So, as that yoga teacher, you've got the kids coming into that classroom, you get down on their level if they're little kids. Like my children go to a thing called Gymboree and the teacher's great. She'll get down and she'll be like, hey, Alisha, how you doing? And she's doing that to every single kid that comes into that room. And whether it's a special little, they might like to hug you, high five you, whatever it is, they might just want to like give you a big smile. That's fine. But your connection is your priority. So you're making sure during that class, you're connecting with each and every student just by using their name is so powerful. And greeting them when they come into the classroom makes them go, oh, she knows me. She wants me to be here. Because just think, have you ever gone into like a massive meeting or like a conference and you walk in those doors and you're like, oh gosh, like I feel really kind of alone. Like if you don't have a buddy
mhm,
there, you're like, it feels different. But if you went into into a conference and so, someone's like, "Hey, Alicia, here's your name badge. So good to see you." You'd be like, "Oh, great. Yeah, I'm glad
yeah,
I'm here." So
yeah,
think of that. Connection is your priority. The next one is consistency. So I know as like teachers, we go in with a lesson plan, right? We're like, we've got how we set up our lessons. So if you're new into a yoga teacher, you're going to keep your lessons consistent you're going to have a framework. Think of it as a framework.
yeah,
So let's break it down into 5 parts. You've got a little intro. So when they come in, you welcome them, you say hi, you might have some music on or whatever it might be. They go around and have a little chat to their friends and then like you might have a little symbol, like you might even have a like, little ding, and that's a signal to the kids, hey, the lesson started. So then you do your little warm up. That could be a startup song. You probably going to do some gentle stretches. That's going to go for like 5 to 10 minutes. Then you're going to go into part 3, which is your main teaching part. This is the bit you love about yoga teaching. You're going to get there and you're going to go through, you might have your yoga poses and you have them sequentially set up and you might have a story embedded into it. And that's probably going to go for like 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that main lesson, you got your kind of cool down or as we kind of call in the teaching world, our wrap up. And that's where you're probably going to do your relaxation, your mindfulness, your breathing. I mean, you could start with that and finish with that, however it works with you, but just keep it consistent. And then you've got your little closure. You completely wrap it up with, I know my kids in their Gymboree class, they have a special song and they do their little actions and they sing the song. And like the teacher then goes round and goes, thanks so much for coming, Giselle. Thanks so much for coming, Alisha. And
Yeah.
that's it.
I
So
love it.
keep your lessons consistent. It's
Yeah.
it's a formula for success, I promise you, from a woman who loves spontaneity, which comes every now and then. You need it, but
Yeah.
if you're spontaneous every single lesson, the kids don't know what to expect. They don't feel safe because one, that's your third part, is expectations. Think of your
Mm,
expectations as your boundaries. When the kids come in, you want to set a tone of this is what we expect. We sit down together, we listen together. When you do your poses, you have your own space. You don't get in other people's faces. When I'm talking, you're listening. When you're talking, I'm listening. So you just want to make sure you're setting up those clear expectations and don't make it like a long, long list. Just keep it down to, like in the teacher world, I kind of say three, 4 things maximum. But if
yeah.
it's just as simple as what are my values as a yoga teacher, and make them your expectations of we're kind, we listen, we give each other space.
Right.
They're my
I love it.
tips.
I love
Connection,
it. Because
consistency,
connection,
expectation.
consistency, it makes so much sense. I think the simplicity of what you're saying too, and what made me think of that, you're talking about connecting. It's not, and I see this as you were saying, that it's not just about connecting with your students, right? It's about how do we connect? I think sometimes we're getting disconnected from the curriculum even. So the connection between how do we connect what we have to teach, right? The must do, may do within the curriculum. How do we connect that to our students? Right. And so I think that can be trouble for new teachers too, or even teachers been around a long time. It's so vigorous. There's so much more going on, so much more pressure. But how do we connect to the curriculum in a way that we know will make it fun and interesting, right, with our students? Because it can sometimes be, oh, we're going to connect with our kids over here, but here's a curriculum we have to run through. Well, they have no interest in that curriculum. So how can we bridge that gap? How do we bridge the gap between ourselves and the children and the children and the curriculum and ourselves in the curriculum, right?
Yeah, look, that would be a third one, would be like lesson planning. I don't know the whole curriculum. I'm going to give you a news flash. I
Yeah.
never knew the whole curriculum.
Right.
The curriculum changed. Like I've
Yeah.
worked in 3 different locations, 2 different countries, and the curriculum was different, but it was always the key foundations.
Yeah.
Like you're always going to be teaching the kids about, the basics of your mathematics, the reading and writing. And oh my
Yeah.
goodness, we're in an age where we can just log on and we can find it. Like
Yes.
tip, book
Right.
bookmark the curriculum in
Yeah.
on your browser.
Yeah.
And I would go back to it and I think this is one thing I'm super passionate about. You don't have to do everything standalone. You might look at it and go, oh my God, there is 20
Right.
different outcomes for, health, or, usually there's not 20 for health, but, there's like
Yes.
8 different things for health, or there's,
Right.
your maths and English, it's a stupidly large number. And I agree, it is 100% overwhelming. I would
Mm.
jump into the classroom today. I would be overwhelmed looking at that. But then I would go, you know what? When we go out into the world, everything's kind of all melded together. It's holistic. It's,
Yeah.
put it in a bundle together. So when
Yeah.
you sit down and you go, all right, I'm going to teach my spelling skill, and think of this as well with like your yoga or whatever, you're
Yeah.
you're going to be teaching them, you know, listening, communicating. They're using
Mm,
their oral skills. Then you're also going to be incorporating, like if they're having to break down like phonemes, they're going to be using their mathematical skills. And then you could actually embed it and be like, oh my gosh, my kids, like think of the Olympics. We're recording this while the Olympics have just wrapped up.
yeah.
But think of that, the Olympics, like you could use that as a theme to kind of bring everything together. And right then you've got
Yes.
interest, kids
Yeah.
are motivated, and you
Yes.
can bring it all together.
Yes.
Um, so I think sometimes we have to not look at it as a list to check off the curriculum, but look at it as an option of how can I be super creative, or not necessarily creative, but how
Yes.
can I just bring it all together into a melting pot of goodness?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And what you're describing, Alicia, is exactly the same with yoga, right? Because yoga encompasses so many pieces, right? With meditations and mindfulness and postures and karma yoga and positive affirmation. There's so much to the curriculum, um, to say that you pick and choose. And the way you describe that outline is pick and choose what you're initially interested in, and the children will be interested in, so they'll feel your enthusiasm. So everything you're saying is exactly relatable to teaching yoga as well.
And there's a reason we have a year with the kids, but there's also a
Yeah.
reason why they're at school for a large portion of their childhood, because
Yeah.
it's a building blocks. The teacher the following year is going to expose it to them. In
Right.
the yoga school, they're going to
Yeah.
get the same exposure, and they're going to get it in a different way or present in a different way, and that's a great thing. So never be anxious of the fact of like, oh my God, I didn't do that one thing.
Right.
I can promise you, you did through osmosis sort of thing. And
Yes.
another teacher's probably going to pick up where you left up, and they might love that element of the curriculum
Yeah.
and run with it.
Yeah.
So like we teach our kids, we're not here to be like a little encyclopedias and to hold all that information. We're
Right.
teaching them the tools to be able to obtain the information. So
Yeah. I love it.
don't be too scared by the curriculum. Just know that you've got people around you to support you. There's lots of buttons you can click. They'll give you examples, and you can talk to people like us in the community, and we're here to go, hey, you got this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So speaking of that, what is you must have a success story or something to share about, you as a new teacher or one of the teachers in your community using these
Yes.
simple tools.
Look, I think when you start anything that's new, the big feelings you get are like
Mm,
overwhelm, and you're like, oh, there's just so much. And
right.
I But I know that's paired up with passion. Like you
Yeah.
don't, you get into teaching or any form of teaching of any subject because you love it, because for some reason it ignites a fire in you. So you got to hold on to that passion and don't let the overwhelm take it over.
Yeah.
So I think we have a couple of members who really shared that when they've come in and they've gone, I just don't know where to start, right?
Mm,
When you got a big project to do and you go,
mm,
oh, how am I going to get this done? What's the first thing they say? Break it down into bite-sized steps. And that's what we're all about in our membership and in our communities. It's like we just break it down into bite-sized steps, and you just focus one area to focus on. So we're all about giving like clear steps and clarity, and giving
mm,
you that flexibility to modify what you might need for that cohort of students. So, say, for example, we get a lot of students, teachers who come through and they're like, I'm so worried about the parents. Like, I'm really worried about the parents. Like, oh, especially if they're young, they're like, oh gosh, I'm like so
of
young,
course.
and
Yeah.
what would I know? It's like, hang on a second, you know a lot.
Yeah.
You've studied for this. You've had life experiences from the day you were born. You are ready for this. And
Yeah.
like we say, we give them like little steps. Like if you've got a tricky parent, these could be some of the reasons why that's happening. If you're planning a meeting,
Yeah.
make sure you've got your information, make sure you have your notes, make sure you've prepared them. You prepared the students or what you're going to talk about. So we just kind of break it down into bite-sized steps, and immediately you feel that overwhelm go, oh,
Right.
I've got a framework.
Yeah.
I've got an element of consistency where I can go, this is what I do. And you pull out that little checklist and off you go. So I feel that when we have people who come into our community particularly in their first 3 years of teaching. They just love how we kind of just break it down and just keep it realistic as well of like, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have ebbs and flow, and that's okay. If you feel the rails are coming off, slow down, pinpoint what it is, jump into our community, and we'll probably have a little framework to help you through it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm a big fan of frameworks. I remember in one of my first years of teaching, one of the experienced teachers said to me, just focus on one subject a year. Not that of course, as an elementary school teacher, I'm teaching all subjects, but in terms
yeah,
of diving deeper and really becoming an expert, so to speak, in one area. And then, so the first year was math, and then the year after that, it was language, so that really helped me to kind of you had to start somewhere. Otherwise, if you're trying to be an expert on everything right away, it's completely overwhelming. And the same within yoga. So
yeah,
if you're spending, okay, I'm going to spend this term really getting clear on how do I integrate the poses with themes or stories or whatever, and then
yeah,
next time I'll look at how to incorporate mindfulness activities, whatever. So it's the same kind of thing. We don't have to, I think going back to the idea of your expectations, right? Expectations of yourself as well as,
yeah.
knowing that you're not going to know everything right away, right? And honestly, the children will not notice, right?
No, and it
Yeah.
and it keeps it attainable. Like, that
Yes.
reminds we always say, like, just pick one thing, like you said, one thing to focus on. And
Yeah.
especially with those, with any form of teaching, you're going to find something you probably really like a lot more than other things. Like,
Right.
you might prefer the mindfulness element more than, or the
Yes.
poses, or you might really love like incorporating like the breathing is just something you really love doing in like the yoga
Mhm.
teacher space. So I guess be gentle on yourself and know what your superpower is. Like for
Yeah.
me, my superpower is I love the connecting with students. Like the pastoral thing was my superpower. Yeah, the academics were important and teaching them the skills, but I was all about like teaching them like the skill behind the knowledge that they're obtaining and like
Mhm.
really connecting with them and encouraging them. And that was probably my superpower. Then my
Right.
colleagues, oh my God, get her into like the academics and like breaking it down into like the teaching components. And she would be like, this is how we're going to teach writing. And I'd be like, oh, we are like the perfect pair. This is amazing. So
Yes.
sometimes you just got to realize what your strengths are and not be discouraged if you might not be a superstar in one area, because that's normal and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that idea too, that you're focusing more on who you be than what you're doing. Again, I remember, I think my fifth year teaching, I was actually at the Sydney International School. And I had this thought, you know what? My kindergarten students are not going to know that I've been up till 10 every night cutting out this or that, the other, right? I thought, let's focus on what matters, right? So I can have a life outside of school as well, right? I mean, they have like speaking of that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And and I thought, okay, what is it that I have to do? What's my must do and may do for tomorrow? And they are honestly not going to notice. That way, when I get to school, the lesson is probably simpler. I can be with them, I can connect with them, I have better
Yeah.
expectations instead of just having this like, I'm going to create the best lesson plans ever and everyone's going to be, it's going to, no, they don't know what they don't know, right? They're more
Yeah.
interested in the way you're being and how you're showing up for them, not that you're scrambling around to get all the bits and pieces to the lesson, right?
Yeah. That's so true. Like there's a reason for that saying, like, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah,
Like,
seriously.
and the kids will pick up on that energy. Like if
Yeah.
you're starting your class and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, or where's my thing, where's that? They pick up on that energy and they kind of like sense it, and then they like bounce off each other. So calm, go
Yeah.
in being like, what I've got this, right? I think
Yeah.
with consistency and connection and expectations, no matter what, you got this. And that's where the confidence comes through. And you're
Yeah.
ready to, I think if you get into the world of teaching, you got to be accepting of a bit of chaos,
Yeah, right. Right.
and being comfortable in the uncomfortable. I feel like that's my
Yeah.
word of the year at the moment, of
Oh
kind
my
of,
gosh.
just being uncomfortable and like, oh, that didn't go how I planned, but I know how to bring it back.
Oh, I
Right.
love that.
I'm
I'm
going to use
reading I'm reading Comfortable with Uncertainty by Pema Chodron, the Buddhist
Oh,
nun. Yeah. And even the cover made me uncomfortable because I thought, oh no, this is the one thing I really struggle with being uncertainty. Like, I think that comes from years of being a teacher. You have a plan and you want things to go a certain way. And so I have to constantly remind myself it's in the creativity and not knowing that it often is the miracles. Things often turn out completely different than you thought, and it's even better. So, right?
yeah, and newsflash, the kid who makes you feel the most uncomfortablest will
Seriously.
become the kid you love the most because they taught you
Seriously.
something
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's
Right?
refreshing. Yeah, so
Yeah,
much.
I think that could be our parting advice there. I really, truly, and that shows up again and again. So this last year, a fourth grade class I was working with as a teacher substitute, it was really challenging, and the teacher really struggled. She was amazing. She was a saint. Some of the behaviors were huge, and it was only a couple children who really set off the entire classroom. But I said to her the last couple of days of school, I said, you know what? It's been an incredible year, in terms of wow, what you've been through. But you know what? I bet you love those children deeper than you love other years because the connection, like you have to work so hard and the difference you've made to those children's lives, it will be planting a seed for life, right? So
Yeah,
sometimes it's true, the harder we work, and also in yoga classes, we hear that all the time. People say, well, how do I get the children engaged? How do I get them involved? And they're reluctant. They don't want to participate. But those are often the children who, weeks or days later, whatever, are going home and telling their teachers about the experience that they had that
yeah.
shocks kids yoga teachers all the time. You think, wait, what? I thought that child wasn't listening or participating, but they're the ones who are absorbing it in their own ways, right?
Yeah, that's right. They'd be going, that's my favorite part of the day, miss. And you'd be like,
Really
did not get that.
did
But I,
not
I
get
guess
that.
that's it. You've got different personalities, you've got different emotions and feelings, and that in itself is magical and confronting, but let's just be comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Comfortably
And
uncomfortable.
in that yoga space, breathe it out.
Yeah, right. And I think that's what I was thinking about when you first mentioned about the teachers are feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, drowning. I hear this a lot. All of those. It's huge emotions to be carrying. It's a lot. That's a lot for a teacher to carry and walk into a classroom and still have all the things they have to not only connect with the teacher or the children, but also the admin, everything else. But I think at the end of the day, as you say, bringing it back to the simple piece of, we're all human. Like, so I yoga teacher taught me a year ago or so, is how human of me. Put your hand on your heart and on your chest and say how human of me. And that's really helped me kind of like some of those days I
Yeah.
come home from subbing, I think, oh my gosh, how human of me. I'm overwhelmed. It's okay. This is a human emotion. I'm making a big difference. If it was easy, everyone would do it. We're in this to make a difference and to connect to our why, right? Why are we doing this in the first place?
Yeah,
Right.
that's so true. And my little last parting gift on that, keeping it simple, when the
Yeah.
wheels are falling off,
Yeah.
do that thing that you love, and that will
Mm.
settle and calm your class. I would always go back to, you know what? We've done our hard teaching, we've done our like hard literacy or maths or whatever it might be. And the rest of the afternoon, we're going to do passion projects or we're going to
Oh, I
get
love it.
outside. And just
Yeah.
think of like that with your yoga. Like if there's a thing that you really love doing, or you know that a class really loves doing it, be like, it's a special day. We're just going to dive really into these yoga stories because I know how
Yes.
much you love it. And just be like, this is where you bring I've got my consistency, but I'm just going to mix it up because
Mhm.
I know we need it. So
I love it.
simple is best. Simple, simple, simple.
I love it. Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. You're an absolute gem. I'm so glad we met. I'm so looking forward to sharing your work with our community. So, how can we find you online? How do we connect with you further?
Oh, yes. And thank you so much for having me. I have really enjoyed this chat. We are at rainbowskycreations.com. That is kind of like our hub where we have heaps of blog posts. We've got many resources, but we've got so many blog posts where we share information. We've also got a podcast called Rainbow Skies for New Teachers. So you can hear Ashley and I chat and also chat to amazing people like Giselle as well.
Oh,
And on our socials like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, find us at Rainbow Sky Creations. And
beautiful.
we'll DM us. We're always up for a chat if you want to.
Awesome. And I love it. So, and don't forget to, for our Australian, non-Australian, American, British, Canadian, whatever, Rainbow Sky Creations for all teachers everywhere. So not
Yeah,
just Australian, right? It's a
yeah.
global community, which is beautiful.
Well, it's so true. We have
Mhm.
so many American teachers, Canadian teachers, South
Yeah.
African, we have even Japanese,
Yeah.
Brits, you name it. So
Awesome. I love it.
I think that global community is just magical. So thanks for
Love
letting
it.
me be part of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Elisa. Take good care. See you
Bye.
later.
Thank you.